The first time the voice came through the PA, I thought it was a test. It wasn't loud. It wasn't urgent. It didn't even sound like it was meant for anyone. It sounded like someone leaned too close to a microphone in an empty building and forgot they'd pressed the button. And the worst part was that it said my name like it had been waiting until the moment I was alone enough to hear it. I was working nights at a distribution office on the edge of town, one of those low, windowless buildings with a loading dock that always smelled faintly of diesel and cardboard dust. During the day, it was busy. Forklifts, radios, the constant beep of trucks backing up. At night, it became something else. A place held together by emergency lights, automatic locks, and the hum of machines that didn't need people to stay awake. I wasn't a guard. I wasn't even officially security. My title was Overnight Operations Coordinator, which meant I handled the things that couldn't wait until morning: late shipments, damaged inventory logs, alarm notifications, and the occasional driver who showed up at the wrong time with the wrong paperwork. It was a quiet job most of the time, and that was why I took it. I just moved into a cheap apartment after a breakup that left me with too much silence. Nights were the hardest. At work, silence felt structured. Predictable. Something I could sit inside without thinking. My shift started at 11 p.m. and ended at 7 a.m. The last day supervisor would leave around 10:30. The cleaners came through at midnight on certain nights, but mostly the building was mine. There was an office area up front, 2 rows of desks, a break room, a conference room nobody used, and a small control closet with the alarm panel and camera monitors. Behind that was the warehouse, long aisles of shelving you couldn't see the end of in the dark, rolling doors that locked with heavy metal latches, and a ceiling so high it made every small sound feel like it belonged to someone else. We had a PA system. A real one, mounted in the warehouse and in the office hall. During the day it was used for simple things: announcing truck arrivals, calling for forklift support, letting everyone know when there was a safety drill. At night, it wasn't supposed to be used at all. The intercom console sat on the wall in the small control closet, right beside the camera monitors. A plastic handset, a push-to-talk button, and a little green light that glowed when the system was on. I barely noticed it most nights. Until the voice. The first night it happened was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always boring. No late shipments, no surprise deliveries. Just paperwork, quiet, and the building settling. Around 12:40 a.m. I was sitting at the small desk in the control closet, scrolling through an inventory discrepancy report, when I heard the faint click and pop of speakers waking up. It came from somewhere deeper in the building first, like the warehouse ceiling speakers. A soft static hiss. Then a voice. Not loud, almost like it was trying not to wake anyone. Mark. I froze. Nobody called me Mark at work. My name isn't Mark. That's not the name on my badge. But the voice said it with that casual certainty people use when they expect you to answer. I turned my head slowly toward the PA console on the wall like it might be lit up. The green light was off. The handset was hanging in place. The push-to-talk button wasn't pressed. Still, the speakers hissed softly. And then, a second later, another quiet sound came through. Breathing. Not theatrical. Not heavy. Just the small, rhythmic breath of someone who forgot how sensitive a microphone can be. I stood up and stepped into the office hallway. The building around me was quiet. No footsteps. No doors. No radio chatter. The only sound was the HVAC cycling somewhere above the ceiling tiles, and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights that never fully stopped even when they looked dim. I walked back into the control closet and stared at the PA console. I touched it with 2 fingers like it might be warm. It was cold plastic. I told myself it was a glitch. Some systems auto-test after midnight. Some speakers click on when the alarms run self-checks. The warehouse had automatic diagnostics on elevators, fire doors, motion sensors. It was normal for lights to blink or panels to chirp. A voice wasn't normal, but it could still be an accident, someone in another building on the same network hitting a button. A crossed line. A misrouted broadcast. Something technical. I forced myself to sit back down. And then, like the building had been waiting for me to pretend it was fine, my phone buzzed with an alert from the alarm system. Door open, north loading bay. I frowned. That door shouldn't open unless a truck driver was checking in early, and there were no scheduled arrivals. I pulled up the camera feed for the loading bay. The image showed exactly what I expected, a dark dock, a line of closed metal doors, yellow safety lines, and empty space. No movement. No headlights. Nothing. The door alert stayed on the screen like a statement that refused to become true. I checked the log. It cleared itself in about 10 seconds. Door closed. Like it had never happened. I sat there for a long time, staring at the monitors until my eyes started creating shapes in the grain of the cameras. Then I went back to work. The next night, I didn't think about it until 12:41. I didn't mean to. It wasn't like I was sitting there counting minutes. But when your brain catches a pattern, it doesn't ask permission. At 12:40, I noticed I was holding my breath without realizing it. At 12:41, the speakers clicked. That same soft pop. The same thin hiss. And then, again, the voice. Only this time it didn't say Mark. It said my actual name. Clear. Correct. My stomach tightened so hard it felt like I'd swallowed something cold. I stood up so fast my chair rolled back into the wall. The voice didn't sound like it came from one speaker. It sounded like it came from the building itself, office hallway, warehouse, break room. Everywhere at once. Don't move, it said quietly. I didn't move. Not because I trusted it. Because my body had already decided. My eyes went to the camera monitors without me thinking. I scanned every feed quickly. Loading bay. Front entrance. Warehouse aisles. Office hallway. All empty. Then I heard something else through the speakers, under the voice. A faint echo of my own office. The buzz of the light above my desk. The quiet rattle of the mini fridge in the break room when it kicked on. It sounded like the microphone wasn't picking up a distant line. It sounded like it was picking up my building. My throat went dry. Hello. I said out loud, and my voice sounded stupid in the control closet. The speakers stayed silent for a beat. Then, softly. Good. One word. Like a test. Then the hiss cut out. Speakers dead again. Nothing on the PA console lit up. The building returned to normal silence like it had been holding its breath with me. I stood there shaking, looking at the PA handset. Finally, I picked up the office phone and called the building security number. It wasn't 911. It was the contracted security company that monitored alarms after hours. A tired man answered. Security dispatch. This is. I'm at the distribution office on Ridgeway, I said, trying to keep my voice level. Did you just broadcast something over our PA system? Pause. No, he said. We don't have access to your PA. Only your alarm panel. Because someone just, I started, then stopped. Saying it out loud sounded unreal. Someone just spoke through it, I finished. Another pause, longer. Are you alone in the building? Yes. He asked if any doors were open. If any alarms were triggered. If I could confirm my badge logs. He suggested maybe a radio frequency crossed. Or someone in the warehouse had accidentally hit a talk button. There's nobody here, I said. I checked the cameras. Cameras aren't perfect, he said, not unkindly. If you feel unsafe, you can call police for a wellness check. Hearing him say it like that made my skin crawl. A wellness check. Like I was the problem. I thanked him, hung up, and sat back down. I didn't tell anyone in management. I didn't want to be the night guy with the ghost story. I told myself it was a glitch. But I didn't turn my back to the hallway for the rest of the night. By the third night, I did what people always do when they don't want to feel powerless. I made rules. I kept the office lights bright. I kept my phone on the desk, screen up. I kept the camera feeds enlarged. And I kept the PA console in my line of sight. At 12:39, I stood in front of it and stared at it like I could intimidate it into behaving. At 12:41, the speakers clicked anyway. The voice came through, a little closer this time. Not louder. Just closer, like the microphone was nearer to someone's mouth. "You're early," it said. My heart slowed down in that strange way it does when fear stops feeling abstract. "What?" I whispered, then caught myself. I didn't want to speak softly like it was a conversation. "What do you want?" I said, louder. A short pause. Then, through the speakers, the sound of a chair rolling. A squeak, familiar. And then the voice again. "Just stay where you are." I felt my hands go numb. Because I recognized the chair squeak. It was the cheap rolling chair in the conference room, the one with the broken wheel that made a distinct chirp every time it shifted. The conference room was down the hall from the control closet. No camera pointed directly inside it. Only the hallway camera that showed the door. I turned to the hallway feed. The conference room door was closed. No shadow under it. No movement. Still, the sound had come through the speakers like a message. I walked into the hallway, slow, keeping my eyes on the camera monitor as if it could protect me. The hallway lights were dimmed to night mode. Each step I took triggered the motion sensors ahead, lighting small sections in sequence. It made the hallway feel longer than it was. I stopped outside the conference room door. I listened. Nothing. No chair. No breath. No voice. I put my hand on the doorknob. It was cold. I turned it slowly. The door opened with a soft click. The room was dark. Rows of stacked chairs. A long table. A faint reflection of emergency lights in the window glass that faced the warehouse. Empty. I stepped inside and flipped on the light. It buzzed to life. The chair in the corner, the broken one, was tucked under the table like it always was. I walked over and nudged it with my foot. It rolled slightly and squeaked. Same squeak. I stood there in the bright light, trying to convince my body that it had been nothing. Then I noticed something else. The PA speaker mounted in the corner of the conference room ceiling had a tiny green LED. It was lit. That speaker was live. I stared at it until my eyes hurt. Then I turned off the light, backed out, and closed the door. When I returned to the control closet, the PA console was still unlit. But the monitors showed something new. A small notification in the system log. PA system, broadcast active. Timestamp, 12:41 a.m. No user ID. No console activation. Just, active. Then cleared. I sat down and felt my stomach turning. Because this wasn't a crossed line. This was my system. And it was turning on without hands. Over the next week, the voice became a routine I hated. Always after midnight. Never at the same minute exactly, but always in that window when the building felt like it had stopped belonging to the day. Sometimes it said my name. Sometimes it said nothing at all, just breathing. Once it played the sound of a door latch closing. Once it whispered so quietly I could barely hear it. "Don't check." When it said that, I didn't know what it meant until I realized I had been about to look at the access logs. My mind started doing that thing it does when there's no clear threat to fight. It built theories. Was someone in the building? Was someone hacked into the PA system? Was there an old microphone somewhere left live? Could the security company access the speakers even if they said they couldn't? I started arriving early to check doors and closets. I started walking the office before midnight, opening rooms that were usually closed, just to prove they were empty. I checked the conference room every night. Every night it was empty. Every night, at some point after midnight, the speaker inside it would light up again. And the voice would come through. Never shouting. Never panicking. Like it knew it didn't need to. One night I tried something different. I turned the PA system off entirely. There was a breaker panel in the control closet labeled COM/PA. I flipped it. The green power light on the console went dark. I waited. At 12:50, the warehouse speakers clicked anyway. A pop. A hiss. Then silence. No voice. Just the hiss continuing longer than usual, like the system was searching for a signal. Then, softly, the voice. You don't get to turn it off. I felt a cold wave go through me. Because if the breaker was off, the voice shouldn't exist. The speaker hissed, then cut out. The next morning, when I flipped the breaker back on, the console came to life like nothing had happened. No error codes. No diagnostics. No record. I started thinking about leaving the job. But leaving felt like making it bigger. Like confirming it was real. And there was still a part of me, stubborn, tired, that wanted to beat it with normality. The night it shifted from eerie to unbearable was the night the voice stopped talking to me and started talking about me. It was around 1:10 a.m. I was in the control closet with the monitors, trying to focus on work I could barely read. The speakers clicked. The voice came through without saying my name. He's still here, it said. My stomach dropped. I looked up at the monitors. Warehouse aisles empty. Hallways empty. The voice continued, calm and low. He keeps looking at the cameras like they're going to save him. I sat very still. The hair on my arms rose. Because there was no way this was a prank broadcast meant to scare me. It sounded like someone talking to someone else. Like I wasn't supposed to hear it. The voice paused. Then, softly. He never checks behind him. I felt my pulse hammer in my throat. My eyes flicked to the reflection in the dark monitor glass, my own face pale under fluorescent light. Nothing behind me but the doorway to the hall. Empty. I forced myself not to turn around quickly. Not to act like a hunted animal. The voice sighed. Then, it's fine. The speakers clicked off. I sat there in silence, the kind of silence that feels like something holding pressure. I realized then that my fear wasn't just the voice. It was the idea that someone was near enough to narrate me. Near enough to notice what I did and didn't do. And somehow, the PA system wasn't the source of the horror anymore. It was the proof. I called my manager the next afternoon and tried to keep it professional. Something's wrong with the PA system at night, I said. It's activating on its own. He sounded annoyed in that way people do when you bring them problems they can't solve quickly. Is it affecting operations? He asked. It's broadcasting, I said carefully. Voices. Sounds. It's not supposed to. Silence. Then he cleared his throat. Are you sure it's not a radio or a phone or something in the building? He asked. It's through the speakers, I said. In the warehouse. In the office. It's our system. Another pause. I'll put in a ticket, he said finally. Maintenance can look at it. He said it like the end of the conversation. I waited, hoping he'd ask for details. Hoping he'd sound concerned. He didn't. He just said, anything else? I wanted to tell him. I wanted to say, I think someone's in there with me. But the truth was, I didn't have proof. I had sounds and a voice and a feeling. So I said no. That night, I came in and found a maintenance note on the desk. Pa, check scheduled, next week. No urgency. No warning. Like it was a leaky faucet. I stared at the note until my eyes blurred, then crumpled it and put it in my pocket. The next few nights were worse. Not because the voice got louder. Because it got more specific. It started referencing things that were only true in the moment. Your coffee's getting cold. Your phone is face down. You're shaking. Sometimes it said those things before I noticed them myself. Once, it said, "Look at the door." And a second later, the hallway camera showed the conference room door gently swinging open. Not fast. Not forced. Just drifting open like it had been unlatched. I watched it in disbelief. I hadn't been down that hall since I arrived. The voice came through again. "He's going to go check," it said, almost amused. "He always does." I didn't go check. I sat there with my hands flat on the desk, forcing myself not to move. The conference room door stayed open. Darkness inside. No motion. No figure. Just an open door that shouldn't have opened. The voice breathed quietly into the mic. Then, better. The door swung closed again. I stared at the monitors until my eyes hurt. That was when the pattern locked into my body. After that, every night, I caught myself listening for the speakers like a person listens for footsteps behind them. 2 weeks after the first voice, the building did something I didn't know it could do. At 12:58 a.m., the PA speakers clicked and hissed, and then the voice came through. But it wasn't in the speakers. It was inside the office with me. Not physically, no one was standing there. But the sound was different. Clearer. Less distant. Like it was coming from the small ceiling speaker directly above the control closet doorway. Like whoever was talking had found a closer microphone. The voice didn't say my name. It didn't narrate. It simply said, "Come here." My throat tightened. I looked up at the ceiling speaker outside the closet. The tiny LED on it was lit. I didn't know that speaker even had a light. I'd never noticed it before. I stood up slowly. I stepped out into the hallway, directly beneath that speaker. The building was so quiet I could hear the distant ping of an elevator diagnostic test somewhere in the back. The speaker above me hissed softly. Then, quieter. Closer. I stood there, looking up like an idiot at a piece of plastic mounted to a ceiling tile. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it shook my ribs. And then, in a voice that sounded almost gentle, it said, "Now look at yourself." The hallway had glass along one wall, windows looking out into the warehouse floor. At night, they reflected the office better than they showed the warehouse. I turned my head toward the glass. In the dark, it reflected the corridor behind me. And in that reflection, I saw someone standing several feet back, near the end of the hallway where the motion sensors didn't reach. They were a shape at first. A cutout of darkness inside darkness. Still. Not moving. As if they had been there long enough to become part of the building. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My eyes locked on the reflection in the glass. The figure didn't move. The speaker above me hissed. Then the voice said, right above my head, "Don't turn." My stomach dropped into something cold and hollow. The figure in the reflection tilted its head slightly, like it was curious how long I would obey. My mouth went dry. I could feel my own breath loud in my ears. The voice continued, calm. "You can't see it when you're facing it," it said. "You only notice it when you're looking away." I didn't understand what it meant. But the way it said it, like a rule, made my body go weak. The speaker hissed again. Then, quietly. Now walk back. I moved. Slowly, carefully, like a person walking on ice. I took one step backward, still watching the reflection. The figure didn't move. I took another step. The hallway light stayed dim. The motion sensors didn't trigger near the figure, because it hadn't moved. The voice above me whispered. Good. Then the speakers cut out. The LED went dark. The building fell silent again. I stood there trembling, staring into the glass. The reflection showed the hallway behind me. It showed empty space. The figure was gone. No footsteps. No door sound. No alarm. Just gone. I turned around then, because at that point I couldn't make it worse. The hallway was empty. The end of the corridor sat in dim night light. No shadow. No movement. The conference room door was closed. I went back into the control closet and sat down hard. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't type. That was the moment I understood something I didn't want to understand. The voice wasn't trying to scare me. It was guiding me. Teaching me how to experience something in that building. Like it had done it before. Like I was catching up. I left work early that night. Not officially. I didn't clock out. I just grabbed my coat and walked out the front entrance like a person escaping a fire. I sat in my car for 15 minutes with my hands on the steering wheel, watching the dark building in my rearview mirror like it might follow me. My phone buzzed with a missed call. It was my manager, probably wondering where I'd gone. I didn't answer. I drove home. At 2 a.m. I stood in my apartment kitchen and stared at nothing. The silence there was different. Softer. Human. At 2:13, my phone buzzed again. A notification. New voicemail. I didn't remember my phone ringing. My skin prickled. I opened it with shaking fingers. There was no transcription. Just an audio file. I hit play. The first thing I heard was the warehouse speaker hiss. Then the voice. Calm. Close. Good, it said. Then a pause. Then, very softly. Now you can hear it anywhere. The message ended. I stood there in my kitchen, listening to my apartment's refrigerator hum. My own walls. My own quiet. And I realized something that made my stomach turn. The voice on the voicemail wasn't coming through the speaker of my phone. It was coming through the air. Like the building had never needed the PA system at all. Like it had just used it because it was easier. I quit the next morning. I didn't give details. I said I couldn't work nights anymore. I said something in the building felt wrong. My manager didn't argue. He just said, okay, like he'd heard it before. A week later, I got an email saying maintenance had checked the PA system. No issues found. They closed the ticket. I didn't go back. Months passed. My sleep improved. I stopped waking up at every small sound. I almost convinced myself it had been stress. Almost. Until one night, sometime after midnight, I was in a grocery store, one of those places that stays open late with only a few aisles lit. I was alone in the back aisle, standing by the coffee, when the store's PA system clicked. A soft pop. A hiss. And then, in the calm voice I hadn't heard in months. He's here. My breath stopped. The speakers hissed. Then, don't turn around. I stood there in the fluorescent light, staring at the shelf of coffee bags. And I smelled it. Fresh coffee. Like someone had just opened a pot nearby. But I was standing alone. And the store around me stayed quiet. No footsteps. No carts. Just the hum of refrigeration units and the gentle hiss of speakers. Then the voice said one last thing, almost like a reminder. You only notice it when you're looking away. The PA clicked off. I didn't turn around. I left my cart in the aisle and walked out of the store without buying anything. And ever since then, I pay attention to every speaker in every building after midnight. Because sometimes, when the world gets quiet enough, you can hear something listening back.